your whole life. For me personally, I was an athlete, right? So like my parents, I come from a Dominican household, and a lot of my uncles and aunts will call me el pelotero, the ball player, right? So that's kind of part of your identity now, right? And something I was noticing is that a lot of young people, once the game is stripped away from them for whatever reason, maybe they didn't go pro, or maybe they didn't get an opportunity to play college ball, or an injury, whatever the case might be. A lot of these kids were struggling with their identity. Because now you're no longer the football player. You're no longer the star basketball player. And man, you see so many stories of people that fall into like these really dark places mentally. And these are places that some people can't get out of. Let's say you have a career and the injury, and you're playing pro ball, you're making millions of dollars. Now you're telling me you got to come back to the city or the town or the hood that you came from, and try to explain to your little cousins or the 8-year-old kid, that lives on your street why you're not playing pro basketball anymore, pro football, pro baseball. That's something I really wanted to shed light on with Inner City Mindset. I want young people to understand that you're more than an athlete, right? You're much more talented than an athlete, right? You're super educated. You're super talented.
Hey, C, God told me to start this podcast, and then he told me to call you. The time is now. You ready?
I got you, T. Let's do it.
Welcome to another week of the Mental Locker Room Podcast. This, of course, is your boy, Dr. C, and I am here with my illustrious co-host, Tish Johnson. Tish, how are you doing on this Sunday?
What it do, baby? I'm blessed. Always happy to be here, C. Like I say, man, God has really, really blessed us, really touched us with something special. And it's an honor to get on here week after week and bless the people with what God is blessing us with. So glad to have you. Glad to have our guest today as well.
So thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And all of us today showed up.
Right.
Well, the listeners listening don't know that it's sometimes a journey to get here on time.
Right.
On Sundays. So I thank everybody on the call for their flexibility. And for our folks who are uninitiated into the Mental Locker Room, let me go ahead and baptize you. See, the Mental Locker Room Podcast is a space for former athletes turned entrepreneurs and industry leaders to inspire athletes to find identity, purpose, legacy, and mindset beyond the game. So if you're new here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you old here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because I see you haven't. So you you that's listening to this, I'm talking directly to you. Like and subscribe, share. We're trying to get to 500 by the end of the year. Help a small channel and show some love, right? If you love the message. But today's message, y'all, I was just talking before we got on the call about how, man, we done talked football, we done talked basketball. We was missing a sport. We're missing a few sports. But, as an athlete myself, I do have a big three, and this falls in the big three. Today, we finally get to bring in someone who knows a little bit about baseball. We have a guest for you who was a standout in college baseball, and now he's going to bless us with some of the stuff that he is doing to pour in his community today. Today's guest is someone who understands that mindset isn't just a slogan. It's a survival skill, a strategy, a legacy. Edwin De La Rosa is a former Point Park University baseball player who turned discipline on the field into a blueprint for leadership beyond it. At just 5'9", my fellow sub-6-foot brother, and 175 pounds, he was never the biggest guy on the roster. But he learned early that impact isn't measured in inches, it's measured in intention. But the field wasn't the final act. It was the proving ground. As he moved from athlete to creator with his own podcast space, as well as reinventing himself as the founder of Inner City Mindset, a platform that he built to shift narratives and elevate communities. His communities, your community, my community. He understood that the ultimate opponent wasn't across the field, but it was inside himself. The voices of doubt, the patterns of survival, and the invisible barriers that we baked into these systems. And on this episode of the Mental Locker Room family, we're going to dive deep, go beyond the photos and the highlight reels. We're going to explore how Edwin translates his toughness from sports into frameworks for leadership, and how he fuses financial literacy with emotional intelligence, and how he challenges high performers to rebuild their identity around impact, not just applause. This isn't simply a conversation about winning, family. This is about what happens when winning is redefined, is healing, the legacy that you're going to leave, and how you usher in others through the gates that you've built, the elevators you've built, the ramps that you've been able to build, so they can get a little bit of what you got, man. Let's get ready for this story. How you doing today, Edwin?
I'm doing well, Dr. T. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Tish, for having me on your platform. I think that when we met in Chicago, for the moment I met you, I'm like, you could tell like you're a great person, and honestly, it's an honor. It's an honor, and that only showed you, right, that you're always gonna be great people, especially at all these conferences, all these events that you attend. So I do want to thank you again.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. That was a time, man. We were both out there speaking to athletes, and we came to find out we were on a similar mission when it comes to athlete identity beyond the game and things like that. And you've built platforms and a podcast around and an ecosystem around it as well. And so, man, we are happy to have you. And thank you for saying yes. Thank you for saying yes. Hey, we locked in. We locked in.
Absolutely. For sure. Likewise.
Yeah, and I don't know. I might have booked the episode just so we could just hear a New York accent for an hour.
We've been real heavy in the South.
It might come out a few times during this podcast episodes.
Man, I love it. I love it. So let's get into it, man. Tell us a little bit about your story growing up in the inner city, and how baseball played a role in your development into who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents migrated to New York City in the mid '90s. At the end of the day, everybody, from the Caribbean, for the most part, they want the best for their kids, and there was an opportunity to migrate to the United States in the mid '90s, and my parents got married, and they had me and my siblings. One girl, three boys, right? I happen to be the second, the oldest, my older brother Christopher De La Rosa, my younger sister Edwin De La Rosa, and my youngest Kelvin De La Rosa. And my parents did a great job with us, right? However, sometimes when you migrate to say like New York, and you're coming fresh from a different country, right? Like you don't have the opportunity to live in a zip code that you want, right? I think for the most part, it was more of a like whatever opportunity presented itself. My parents, that was a route, right? So my parents raised us in Flatbush neighborhood here in Brooklyn, and then we got an opportunity to move to Coney Island, another part of Brooklyn public housing. And my parents did a great job with us, right? They were extremely strict. Obviously, growing up in a city like New York, there's a lot of, temptations. There's a lot of gang violence, and there's a lot you could get into in the city. And so now I truly understand why my parents were the way that they were with us. But however, I feel like they also did a good job of like having that flexibility with us and trusting us to go out with friends and make good decisions for ourselves. However, the game of baseball, I would say, the game of baseball saved my life overall. And I don't mean that in a way of like, if it wasn't for the game, I would have been, in the street or running around with the wrong crowd. What I mean by that is that it helped develop me into the person I'm today when it comes to the discipline, right? The work ethic. Like these are things that the game really instilled in me. Being on time to places, right? Yeah. How to communicate with my teammates. These are things that the game taught me. And I don't really share this story much, but I remember the first baseball organization that I tried out for. It's called Youth Service, who's an organization here in Canarsie, another neighborhood in Brooklyn. They were known to be like one of the better programs here in the city. And I ended up making a team, but I remember the registration was $1,000 for a 12-year-old. Right. So prior to me trying out for that organization, I played for an in-house league here in Coney Island called OLS, Our Lady of Solace Church. They had a baseball program. And that was an opportunity for me to kind of like build my confidence and work on the fundamentals. However, this travel ball team that I tried out for, they were known for traveling, winning tournaments, and having like a lot of solid talent. Athletes that, had the projectability to play collegiate or maybe even at the pro level. Yeah. I remember being like so nervous, like asking my dad, like, hey, like, is this something that we could afford? This and that, and my dad was like, nah, like, we'll take care of it, and that really meant a lot. Maybe I don't share that as much as I should with my parents, but, as a 12-year-old, think about it. In today's economy, you have a 10 or 11-year-old talking about registration, is
Yeah.
$1,000.
$1,000. Yeah.
On
That's a lot of
top of
money.
registration, tournaments, hotels, food, traveling, from games home, from practice home. So, I really, appreciate the support. Not only my parents, but my family, right? My cousins, always very supportive. I'm on the days off, taking me out to the park. And also like a special thank you to two of my cousins, Jonathan and Pablo. When I was like 6, 7 years old, they played like in a men's, like a professional men's league. And they
Mhm.
would take me out to their games. And, at the end of the day, I appreciate that a lot because, there's not too many people that just want to run around with a 7, 8-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be like in a dugout with those guys or like in the bleachers and stuff. But I think that they kind of saw something within me at that age where I was developing love for this game.
Yeah.
And, I really appreciate that for sure. But yeah, the game has opened up a lot of doors and, it opened up a lot of opportunities for me to play, move on and play at the high school and college level.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask how did you end up choosing baseball? But it seems like when you were 7 or 8, you were going out seeing your big cousins out there running around, hitting balls and everything. You're like, okay, I could see myself doing this as well. Because a lot of young men, I grew up around a handful of baseball players. I had a close friend, and her brother played baseball, and his best friend played baseball, and his best friend played baseball. So I grew up seeing it. I was around like our basketball coaches. They were the t-ball coaches and all of that, and the softball coaches. But you don't see that a whole lot. Most young men, they're like, hey, I want to go play basketball. Or I want to go play football. But you said, no, I want to get in the dugout. But it's because you seen Big Cuz out there. Okay, that makes
Absolutely.
sense. That makes sense.
And one thing I will add to that, Teach, is like, all right, here in New York City, we all know like basketball is,
Yeah,
everybody play ball out here. You feel me?
for sure.
And I definitely played ball. I also played in junior high, like playing at the junior high school I played at. That was the first time I played like organized basketball, like with refs and stuff like that. Besides
Yeah.
that, it was more like just street ball. I wish I would have played football in high school. My parents didn't want me to get hurt and stuff like that. But the reason why I say that is because I always knew I was a good athlete, right? So like,
Yep.
shout out to David A. Booty Junior High School here in Brooklyn. I had 2 great physical education teachers, Mr. Mafe, Mr. Monty, and Mr. Escobar as well. And they were great. They pushed us every day. We played. So this was a magnet school, right? So like a specialized junior high school. And if you had certain talent and certain academic skills, certain subjects that you were really interested in, let's say science, English, or math, they would dedicate an hour of your day, and that'll be called your magnet period, right? So people that were truly interested in math, they'll take an hour of their, schedule, and they will meet with probably one of the best math teachers at that junior high school. If you were good at science, right, we'll meet with the science teacher. I happen to be in the phys ed magnet, and like when I tell you they did such a good job preparing us for high school, because it wasn't like a regular elementary school where you stay in the same class every day. We would, we had a schedule. We're jumping from class to class. We had lockers. The magnet class was great because it was for me it was phys ed, and we played football, we played floor hockey, we played basketball, we played soccer. So I think I did a good job of introducing us to a lot of different sports.
Yeah.
And at the time, the only sport that they had people with other junior high schools was basketball. So that was my first time playing organized basketball. And it was a great experience as well. But then when I got to high school, I think I knew that my passion was basketball and predictability, like Dr. C said, being 5'9", you understand? And knowing that I didn't play organized basketball outside of that middle school, I knew that, baseball was definitely my passion. And I also knew that it was something that I was taking a lot more serious during the summers.
Yep.
So I wanted to lock in with baseball overall.
Love it. Love it.
I love to hear it too, man. One of my favorite books is Why Black People Tend to Shout, and he was written by a guy that he's dead now, but he used to be an ESPN writer. He has a chapter about 90s baseball, and how people of color, really specifically talking about black folks, really, really, really played baseball in the 90s.
Right.
And I think he mentions what you alluded to of the reason why. Man, people ain't got $1,000 like that, man. You got you got 2, 3 of these jokers want to play baseball. That's 3 bands.
Right.
That's a lot of money. And I mean, at this point, travel basketball and teach can attest, that done got expensive too.
Yeah.
Like, so if you want a cheap option, at least monetarily, right? Because football gonna cost you at some point. It may not be money, but like your parents knew, you gonna get hurt playing this game because that's just
Absolutely.
the breaks of playing football. But I always like wonder like how many more folks would be specifically from inner cities would take to the opportunity to play baseball if they didn't have that big price. Because you kind of got to play travel ball and you got to start early if you want to be good at baseball because it's a very high learning curve, man. So I think the fact that you was able to see that opportunity, your parents was able to make it happen, and it got you your higher education, right? So there's a through line. You started at 7 to 8, got you up through school, got you the opportunity to play in college. But when you got there, being from your community and then the culture shock sometimes that happens when we go to higher ed, did you face any challenges as a student athlete, and how did you adapt to those?
Absolutely. So my freshman year, I played at Spoon River College. It was a junior college in Illinois, in the Midwest. So that was a big culture shock for me. I remember being at the Wendy's here in Brooklyn with my little cousins, and I got a phone call. I believe it was a 309 area code. And, it was Coach Hawkins at the time. He was the assistant coach at the program, but he was also their recruiting coordinator. And he's like, listen, we saw your recruiting video. Think you have a lot of talent. We think you got a lot of value to this team. We want to offer you a scholarship. At the time, this was mid-July, for the most part. This is mid-July, my senior year of high school, right? So I'm already thinking, all right, I'm probably going to just go to community college here in Brooklyn, see what happens. And it was tough, bringing it to the attention of my parents because, my parents, they're so used to like having all their kids home and close. So I'm like, Illinois, like, what you want to do out there, But I had to make a selfish decision because I knew it would be worthwhile long term. And I could remember like it was yesterday, how emotional that day was. I ended up having to take 2 planes to get to the town where I was staying. And so the school was in Canton, Illinois, and I stayed in a small town called Cuba, Illinois. And to get to those towns, I had to fly in to Chicago O'Hare Airport, and then from there take a smaller plane into Peoria, which is another smaller city in Illinois, and then do the drive from Peoria into Canton. And I remember just getting to the Peoria Airport and just breaking down. I got very emotional. For the first time in my life, I'm home. I'm looking around. It don't look nothing like Brooklyn. It don't look nothing like New York City.
Nope.
And I think that those first 2 weeks, I really struggled. I don't know if you ever had this feeling having like that knot in your chest, and I don't know if we get that because of fear or anxiety, but I just know that something just didn't feel right for weeks. And I'm very thankful to my college, roommate and teammate, Travis Buckman and his father, who came down with me because, my parents had to work and they couldn't make the trip with me. And Mr. Buckman, man, when I tell you, he took us to Walmart and made sure that we got everything that we needed. Mr. Buckman, again, I can't thank him and his family enough. And it was tough, right? When Mr. Buckman left, and now it's just me and Travis on our own, right? Trying to get a feel for our teammates, trying to get a feel for that town. So it was very difficult. And it was tough for us because during that first week, we had a situation where like somebody made like a racial, wrote like a racial note on one of my teammates at the door and stuff like that. This is a small town with about 500 people. We still, we don't know who left a note on that door. But yeah, it made us feel even more uncomfortable, right? Can you imagine, right? This was like 2 weeks in. But I think with time, we got more and more accustomed to the town, and the coaching staff did a really good job of making sure that we felt comfortable. And we did our thing, both on and off the field. And then my sophomore year, I ended up transferring to CCAC Boys Campus in Pittsburgh. I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. I did my thing. I thought I played well, and I wanted to see if maybe playing in a different conference could help me land a better 4-year opportunity. Did some really good things at CCAC Boys Campus in Pittsburgh under Coach Long. And then from there, I earned a scholarship to play at Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh. And this was a nationally ranked program, Division II program. Program does well every single year, right? In terms of making it to the tournament and winning it. And that program changed everything for me, right? Under Coach Rock and Coach Torres. And the school embraced me, right? I ended up changing my major from physical therapy over to accounting. So that's something that a lot of young athletes don't talk about. Going into a Point Park with 60 credits, they only took 39 at Point Park because I was changing my major from physical therapy to accounting. And that was another obstacle because I'm like, nah, all right, I'm making this move, but now I'm probably going to graduate a year later. But I knew that physical therapy wasn't something I wanted to do long term. And I feel like going the accounting route and the finance route could have opened up more opportunities for me. And, I wasn't afraid to take that route. And, the university did a really good job of embracing me and making sure, that I was locked in. Now, what I wouldn't forget is that first fall ball. So at the college level, when we playing baseball, the fall ball is big. So that's where coaches are making cuts. That's when they're figuring out who's going to make that 25-man roster. That's when they're getting an idea, like, all right, who's probably going to be like my middle infield? Who's probably going to be my center fielder? Who's probably going to be my catcher? Who's probably going to be my best three arms, right? And when I get there in the fall, we had 80 guys trying out for the team. 80 guys. So we had local guys from the Pittsburgh area. We had guys from Puerto Rico. We had guys from DR. We had guys from Florida, California, Texas. So I'm like, all right, time out. This is, it's big boy ball right now, right? And something that I embedded in my mind is like, I'm not going to be making that phone call to my cousins or my parents. I didn't make the team. So I made sure I worked day in and day out. And I ended up making that 25-man roster. And those were probably the best 3 years of my life. Great teammates, great coaching staff. They pushed me every single day. And Point Park is where I began to develop my passion. And this is where, the idea of inner city mindset started. Because during my undergrad, I graduated my accounting degree, but I ended up doing an MBA there as well. And I ended up landing a graduate assistant position for the Rollins School of Business. And I was working under the Dean Tanzili. And that's when I met Dr. Nichols, who, is a major mentor to me in my life to this day. And this is where my passion for public speaking and developing young people really started. For D Tanzili, I was promoting their 4+1 program. So this was a program where they had undergraduate students take credits that they could earn towards the MBA, right? So it'd be a 4+1 where they could potentially get their MBA, their undergrad and their MBA in 5 years. So it was awesome working for the Rollins School of Business and working with Dr. Nichols with his Rajan Brothers and Sisters program. That gave me an opportunity to, kind of get the nerves out when it comes to public speaking and learning how to develop curriculum, right? And that led to me starting my my doctoral program at Point Park University. This is something that I never thought, like me, like the inner city kid that didn't even know what school he was gonna attend, in the summer of his senior year, But I think Barack Obama, I think I saw it on social media one time. He said that when you get an opportunity to be in a room with some of these, super intelligent, super wealthy people, you begin to tell yourself like, wow, like they're no different than me, right? I also belong in that room. I also deserve a seat at that table, right? So big shout out to Dr. Nichols and Steve Tanzine and all the staff at Point Park for believing in me and allowing me to truly believe that this is possible. Achieving an MBA, achieving a doctoral degree is possible. And they truly allowed me to believe that there was something within me that would allow me to connect with young people.
I love that. Why not you?
Why not you?
So shout out to the future Dr. Edwin. All right, it's a wonderful club. We would love more people, so we happy to have you, man. And I love your story of you're going into these spaces with not a whole lot of information on how this is going to shake out, but you walking in the unknown, and that's sometimes it's difficult for our younger folks to do. Is you can't always see just to your nose. You got to be able to see past your nose. You got to be able to see what the long game is. But I venture, if I had to guess, it wasn't an easy thing, and you might have even had some inner work to do as you progress through. So, as you've moved with your different hats, athlete, creative, leader, coach, entrepreneur, future doctor, right? What connects these identities, and what's something that was a not so good part of maybe who you were when you were younger that you had to let go in order to grow into who you are now?
Yeah, so I think every time I got an opportunity to come back to the city for like winter breaks and during the summer breaks, I started noticing young people that I grew up with in my community. I'm struggling to truly find their identity, struggling with their personal identities, personal development, and I started to notice that financial literacy was something that a lot of young people will kind of like struggle with and they were stuck
Yeah.
with, right? Especially post graduation. You see a lot of young people that they graduate from college and not everybody feels comfortable moving back home with their parents, for a number of reasons, right? I was fortunate enough to, come from a very supportive household and, I was able to move back home. My parents would save a lot of money, but that isn't the case for everybody. And, something I noticed is that a lot of young people were struggling to try to figure things out in terms of rent, car notes, insurance, how to budget their money, how to invest their money in a Roth IRA, understand what the difference between a Roth and traditional IRA account is, right? Understand what a CD is, right? Understand what a high yield savings account is. I started to notice that a lot of the younger generation, some of these kids were like lost, man.
Yeah.
I saw social media playing a major role in their confidence, right? So I don't know if you can relate to this, Teach or Dr. C, but back in the day, like I mean, me personally, I enjoyed posting photos of my family. I embrace my family. You understand? But now I see a lot of young people on there. I look at their pages, and these kids, everybody trying to dress like the toughest person on the block. They're too ashamed to post their families, right? Everybody want to be somebody that they not. And I understand, like you might look up to certain artists and celebrities, right? But I think it's important to be you, right? Stay true to yourself. And that's when I started to tell myself, like, wow, like, all right, what if I could like use my experience and everything I've been through to, potentially help empower young people, right? So, we talk about identity, right? Your whole life for me, Percy, I was an athlete, right?
Yeah.
So like my parents, I come from a Dominican household, and a lot of my uncles and aunts will call me el pelotero, the ball player, right? So that's kind of part of your identity now, right? And something I was noticing is that a lot of young people, once the game is stripped away from them for whatever reason, maybe they didn't go pro, or maybe they didn't get an opportunity to play college ball, or whatever, or an injury, whatever the case might be. A lot of these kids were struggling with their identity because now you're no longer the football player, you're no longer the star basketball player, and man, you see so many stories of people that fall into like these really dark places mentally. And these are places that some people can't get out of.
Yes.
Let's say you have a career and the injury, and you're playing pro ball, you're making millions of dollars. Now you telling me you got to come back to the city or the town or the hood that you came from,
Yeah.
and try to explain to your little cousins or the 8-year-old kid that lives on your street why you're not playing pro basketball anymore, pro football, pro baseball, right? So it's difficult. So that's something I really wanted to shed light on with inner city mindset. I want young people to understand that you're more than an athlete, right? You're much more talented than an athlete, right? You're super educated. You're super talented. There are young people that have natural public speaking skills, right? Some young people are truly naturally charismatic, and they don't even know that they have that talent. Some of these kids don't understand that they could walk into a dealership right now and make 6 figures selling cars just because of their personalities. All right. Some of these people could walk into corporate America right now and make 6 figures just because they have natural talents and abilities. Right. So when it comes to obstacles and struggle, of course, I definitely had them. Right. But I think with every obstacle, it taught me a lot about myself. Right. So like, for example, that freshman year, when I was playing JUCO, I really wanted to lock in and make sure I'm putting up numbers on the field, because we all know that if you don't put up numbers at the junior college level, you're not gonna get a scholarship to 4-year school. Because those coaches, to them, is like, if I'm gonna recruit you from a JUCO, you better be putting up numbers. So that freshman year, I made sure to, put up numbers. I led my team batting average, and I did well. But I kind of took my foot off the pedal academically, and I struggled academically that second semester of my freshman year. And I remember just seeing that GPA, and I'm like, wow, okay. My parents are making a lot of sacrifices back home. This would be the last time, like, I'll ever embarrass them on that end. And also, that was a wake-up call for me where I was telling myself, like, this is for you. This is not like high school, middle school, where your parents are going to parent-teacher conference, and they're checking out your grades to see how you're doing, where they can strip the game away. No. This is for you. So if you don't want to do what you got to do academically, you're not cheating nobody. You're cheating yourself.
Exactly.
And from there on out, 3.5 GPA student. And
Light flex.
Yeah, and when I went to Point Park, I graduated with a 3.6 on my undergrad, and I got earned a 3.7 during my MBA. So I would say that freshman year taught me a lot about myself. Um, and then on the field when I was at Point Park, the obstacle was, all right, I'm playing around a lot more talent. So I had to work twice as hard to prove to that coaching staff and to my team that I deserve to be on that field. So those are two of the major obstacles that I faced that I overcame, thank God. And I think overcoming those challenges in my life set me up for the rest of my life for sure.
And I think it's no coincidence that a lot of what you just told us had to do with mindset, right? How you thought about the things you was going through. Like that was for a 19-year-old. I'm guessing he was 19 as a freshman because most people are. For a 19-year-old to go, hey, I ain't finna embarrass my people out here like this, and be talking about grades, be talking about your schoolwork. That shows a maturity and a level of self-awareness, right? That is clear of how you end up doing the work that you do, because that mindset work it's hard to get people to change their mindset.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Like I told you that I'm very passionate about financial literacy, and last week I was hosting a workshop with a few people in my family and a few friends of mine, and we were touching on cognitive biases and the mental shortcuts that we take to justify certain expenses, right?
Yeah.
And that impacts us a lot. So like, for example, like somebody like Bad Bunny, who just had like a crazy residency in Puerto Rico, you'll find ways to justify like making that trip. Like, all right, I mean, a flight's not that expensive. I could probably get the hotel for cheap out there. Like, we'll make it happen. But then when you come back from that trip, you owe $3,000 on that credit card, and you ask yourself like, whoa, and they charge a 30% interest. Like, how am I gonna dig myself out of this hole? So, basically on that call, I was just talking about how financial literacy, for the most part, is not that complicated. It's actually very simple, but it really comes with the shift in mindset that you must have, right, to make changes, right? You need to be able to tell yourself, like, listen, I just can't afford this right now. Let me apply this 50-30-20 rule where I'm budgeting 50% to my needs, 50% to my needs, 30% to my wants, and 20% to my savings, right? Let me kind of trick myself mentally where, okay, I set up a Fidelity account and I'm investing to the S&P 500. Let me set up, direct deposit where they'll take that directly out of my check and invest it straight to Fidelity for me, right? Because there are people that just can't have money in their pockets, right? There are people that, once that check hit on that, bi-weekly on that Friday, they're gonna find ways to spend it.
It's spent before.
I'm about to say it's gone.
Exactly. But now, let's say, for example, if you're making $2,500 bi-weekly, but they taking, 20% out of that top towards your investment account. Now it's like that money don't even exist. But now, 20 years from now, when that money is growing with compounded interest, on top of your pension, you got this big lump sum of money that continues to grow. Now you put yourself in a situation where you could truly have financial freedom and retire early, right? So these are just the minor things that I try to spread with young people, conversations that, I didn't really have with most adults as a 15, 16-year-old. I'm super grateful for a lot of my cousins in my family who have done a lot of, research and have done their homework in terms of educating us. And, inner city mindset, again, like this is a platform that I want to use to help spread knowledge. So whenever I get an opportunity to host a workshop with a group of young people, I just want to have a conversation where I can be transparent with them, right? So when I hosted that workshop last week, it wasn't about educating people on hard financial literacy skills. It's really more on how can we have a conversation where we can gradually start to shift our mindset. So I think these are things that we need to continue to spread, because I'm so tired of looking on social media and seeing young people trying to compare themselves to people that they don't even know like that. They don't know what's behind that luxury vehicle. They don't know what's behind that trip. You understand? And it's tough because now we're starting to see a lot of young people who are struggling with their personal confidence because they can't afford those $500 sneakers, right? Or that Louis bag, right? I mean, we've seen proms lately. We got parents renting out $3,000 vehicles for these kids.
I had to borrow my grandma's car.
Like the tux got to be, designer, this and that. And it's not fair to the parents either, because as a parent, you don't want to tell your kid no. Right? But when you got the kid accustomed to wearing the latest and the best all the time, they're gonna struggle. Why? Because now when they become adults and they gotta use their own money from their own check to keep up to that lifestyle that mommy and daddy was giving you, now that's when they really start to struggle, because they tell them to, like, well, time out. I'm not taking a step back. You know what I'm saying? I need to continue to still live this lifestyle that mommy and daddy gave me, you know? But it hit different when using your own money, right? You know?
For sure.
And it becomes this cycle because now they start to raise their kids like that, right? To be super materialistic. And don't get me wrong, one of the things that I mentioned last week to some of the people that are on that financial literacy call is that, don't get me wrong, listen, like, when you've made sacrifices, treat yourself, right?
For sure.
So if you've been food shopping and you've been meal prepping, you know, and you've been spending less money eating out, go ahead, you know, buy those pair of shoes because you already save like $20 a week, you know, by cooking, right? You want to go to Europe, but you were making sacrifice for 2-3 months to save, to put that money away. Why not? Treat yourself, you know? But something that I'm noticing is that people aren't willing to make the sacrifices up front in order to enjoy the thing that they truly want 3-4 months from now.
Yeah, they want the immediate glamour. They're in the comparison era for sure. And you know, I speak to adults every day that are, when they were on college campus, the first thing they trying to give you is a credit card. At that time, they ain't giving you no knowledge behind it. They're just gonna sign you up for this credit card. You don't even know you got to pay the money back. You just spend it, and they keep giving you cards. And so now, as adults, they're still in those places where they ain't telling you about credit and how all this works and how it impacts your life and your finances later on. And so, you know, people are struggling with that to this very day and still not getting the education. They're not sitting in front of a Edwin and getting the education that they need when it comes to finances. And like you said, like, you want to get out, like, you don't want to be such a stickler when it comes to your finances that you never enjoy life or experience anything outside of your borough or whatever it is. You want to get out and see other things, but there's a way to do it, and there's a time to do it as well. And so, you know, that's where saving and things like that definitely play a role. And so, man, we thank you for your work for sure. So you told us kind of what influenced inner city mindset and, you know, where you kind of got this idea, but tell us a little bit more about that and what your mission is when it comes to your platform and your movement.
Absolutely. So when I got that opportunity to play college ball in Illinois, I had that chip on my shoulder, like, all right, we got the inner city kid that's about to go to the Midwest and ball out, right? However, I also knew that with that came a target on my back because I didn't know that so many inner city athletes, you know, have like this false perceptions from others, right? So like, there are a lot of coaches that they specifically won't recruit kids from the inner city because they might think that, you know, we're not academically sound. They might think that we're going to be a cancer to our team, right? They might think that we're not bright enough, right, to learn the plays, right, to be on that field, especially in football, right? So I think for me, it was more like, all right, I'm getting this opportunity to go away for school and play college ball, but I'm also representing a whole city, right? I'm representing young people that's coming behind me that might be interested in attending the school I went to. And the coach is going to ask himself, what was the last kid from Brooklyn that I recruited? Oh, Edwin? Oh, man. Shoot, if I get another Edwin, that's the message that I wanted to send type of thing, right? So for me, I would say that, you know, inner city mindset, you know, it started because I wanted young people that got these opportunities to go away for school to have that mindset. Like, listen, you know, you're from the inner city, you have tough skin, right? You've always been you've always had that discipline. You've always been super independent. I bring up independency, right? Because at the age of 12, 13 years old, I was taking a train by myself to practices, you know, to games. You know, we had a game in Long Island. I'm meeting with a parent on Delancey Street so I could catch a ride to Long, you understand? So I wanted this, right? I was hungry. But when you grow up in the inner city, you know, that's what comes with it. Like, I remember on weekdays catching a bus on a weekday, getting home at 10 p.m. from practice. And I'm like 13, 14 years old, right? If you was to tell that to maybe a suburban kid or a suburban parent, to them it's like, my kid in downtown Chicago taking the bus at 9:30 p.m. on a school night? Absolutely not. But you know what? Like, I think that really developed me a lot. And it instilled that work ethic, you know. And so, I mean, nowadays we got kids that won't attend practice if their parents can't drive them. You understand? And I know that drives coaches crazy because at the end of the day, these college coaches, they want to recruit, you know, young adults. They're not trying to recruit children. You understand? That's gonna have,
Yeah.
you know, mommy and daddy throwing the Gatorade over the fence and you know, and throwing them the seeds through the fence. That's not what they're looking for. You know, they're looking for athletes, right? That are gonna be independent and could take care of themselves. So, you know, within a city mindset, I'm like, wow, like imagine if I could start a platform where I can help share stories of, you know, inner city, you know, athletes who have been through the same journey I've been, right? And they could share their stories. One thing that I think us as like fans, you know, we kind of fail to see is like, all right, you might see a professional athlete on TV, but you don't really know their stories, right? You don't know
Yeah.
what they've been through. So I'll tell you, when I was at Point Park, a lot of the athletes were from like the Caribbean, from down south, you know, from, you know, the Midwest as well, and the West Coast. And a lot of these kids had awesome stories, right? So I wanted to share some of the stories of a lot of international ball players who made a lot of sacrifice. So like, for example, the first young man that I interviewed, Luis Mujica, his parents migrated from Venezuela to the United States due to political tension in Venezuela. You know, his parents had to migrate to the United States and start a complete new life, right? And mind you, like they were set in Venezuela. Like his dad was an engineer. I believe his mom was like worked in like business administration, and they were doing very well for themselves. But it got so bad that the government was kind of like, you know, kind of forcing them to kind of like give up their businesses, give up their homes. Um, and then when Luis migrated to the United States, he played, I believe he did 1 year in Alabama, playing junior college ball, and he transferred to Point Park. But he's been through so much. Him and his family has been through so much. And I'm like, wow, like I wish I could highlight this kid's story, you know? But in my head, I'm like, who would highlight it, you know? And I'm like, why not? Like you said earlier the other year, why not me? Like why wouldn't I? Why can't I start a platform, maybe highlight his story? And I started getting like a lot of great feedback, and I started interviewing a lot more athletes. And something that I've been doing now, as of recently, I'm gonna start doing a lot of more. It's called Your Message to Inner City Talent series. So I'm gonna be interviewing young professionals in the city of New York, and this is from firefighters to police officers, and, you know, EMT, corporate, anybody, the local bodega guy. And I'll basically ask them like, hey, if you had a message for inner city youth or inner city talent, what would it be? And I like to use the word talent is because I want these young people, and I want the people that I'm interviewing, I want them to know, like, if you had a message for inner city talent, what would it be? Because I think that a lot of our kids have a lot of, you know, talent that they don't even know that they have. And they'll kind of just share, you know, what's on their mind, right? So when we were in Chicago, I interviewed a few people, and they kind of just gave me like a quick 45-second spill of the message that they had. So I definitely want to post more of those series, and also just hosting a lot more workshops as well, because something I've noticed is that sometimes it's the person that's delivering the message. And, you know, anytime I get an opportunity to speak life to somebody, you know, I'm gonna speak in a tone that they're gonna understand. I'm gonna be myself. Sometimes it's tough to have somebody who doesn't look like you know, going up there telling you how you should live your life, or how you should invest your money, or how you should attack this summer so you can make that full team, right? So that's where my passion for public speaking came into play, and where this inner city mindset, you know, where that passion, where that idea came from.
Gosh, boy, you dropping gems, man. That you know, the and realness, man. Because sometimes it's hard for folks to say out loud that the messenger is why you didn't receive that message. You know you needed that message. You know you needed to hear that, right? So now I'm gonna give it to you from somebody who looked like you, so that you don't have to, like, now if you don't want the free game, that's a you problem, right? That's a character flaw. And I love that you like to speak life. Because I think oftentimes in our communities, that's usually what's missing, man. It's a lot of folks talking about what we need to do better, what we need to do different. It's not enough people pouring life into us. So when you think about how that can breed for some folks in the city a need to survive, right? I'm just trying to survive out here. I'm trying to make it to tomorrow. I ain't really worrying about today. And you know that you, like, the dream for them is to be outside of that, to grow out of that. So when you're talking to folks from inner city backgrounds, how do you teach others to honor the kind of intelligence that only being from the hood can breed? without letting institutions solve the rough edges, right, and sanitize.
I would say to be yourself, right? So you see a lot of parents that struggle with their, college athletes because when they come back for a winter break, they're starting to see little changes and they're starting to see a new person. And that's really not what you want. You understand? You see a lot of young people that when they go away for school, they're trying to fit in, right? So sometimes, they could fit in a positive way, they could fit in a negative way, right? You see young people for the first time, they're away from the family. They have all the liberty in the world, right? They got that credit card Tish was talking about, right? So some kids just go wild, right? And this is the fear of a lot of parents. It comes to sending their kid away. They're afraid that their child is not going to have the maturity to be out there on their own, right? But when I get an opportunity to speak to these kids, I like to make sure that they're taking true pride in where they came from, right? So I remember being like 13, 14 years old, catching a ride with a parent, right? And I will never forget having the parent drop me off like 2 blocks away from my apartment building, right? So I told you my family got an opportunity to live in a public housing in a NYCHA building in Brooklyn, and it was a blessing for me and my family. Because I told you it's basically 4 kids, right? My parents had 4 kids, so it was 6 of us in a household. And we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for a decade, right? So that NYCHA apartment was a blessing for us. It was a 4-bedroom, 2 floors, 1.5 bathrooms. So it was a blessing for us. But at the time, I was embarrassed for that parent to drop me off in front of that project building, or in front of that NYCHA building. So I had my boy's dad drop me off like a block away. And then once the car sped off, I kind of walked to my building. And it's sad that I had that mindset at the time because I didn't have the maturity to embrace my surroundings, right? And the community that I grew up in.
Where you came from.
Where I came from. So when I got an opportunity to play college ball, I made sure to really embrace where I came from, embrace the community I came from. And, I think the biggest thing with a lot of young people is making sure that they take true pride in their family, right? The people that are actually making this happen. And so I brought up the example earlier. I'm starting to see a lot of young people that don't even like posting pictures of their families on social media because they're kind of like embarrassed in a way. Like, oh, I don't want to post a flick of my pops. Like, you know what I'm saying? He wouldn't understand me, this and that. Like, that's corny. It's like, nah, like, your pops is the one that's paying the bills. Your mom is the one that's making sure that, you have food on the table and that you have a meal that you can eat in between games, right? She the one that's making sure you got that Gatorade in your backpack, right? Yeah. So I just feel like I wish a lot of young kids, wouldn't take their parents for granted, And the reason I bring that up is because I saw how it impacted a lot of my teammates. First time being away from home, who's doing your laundry? Who's cooking for you? Who's food shopping for you? You understand? Yeah. Who making sure you up on time for practice of the games? Now it's all on you. So a lot of kids will struggle with the discipline aspect. And I think that honestly impacted the kids who made that starting roster and who didn't. Because remember, the head coach at Point Park, he recruited a lot of JUCO guys because he liked the maturity that came with junior college athletes. They already got a year 2 of, of college ball under their belt. They kind of know what it takes to be good at this level. They kind of know what it takes to be, to play well in this conference. So a lot of the high school guys would struggle because they didn't have the maturity. So I saw a lot of guys that had the talent to make the team, but mentally they just didn't have the maturity yet. So they had to be on JV for a year or 2, whatever the case is. But when they came to inner city mindset, I always asked myself, Dr. CNTs, like, listen, what can I do to kind of give back to the game of baseball? Well, what can I do to kind of give back to the young people that were coming behind me? Because I always felt a little bit of guilt because I knew I didn't have the time to coach due to, my career, and due to my job. And, I'll see some of my friends that would coach Little League ball and they had the time to go on tournaments to travel with these kids. I knew I didn't have the time for that. But I'm like, what can I do naturally? Like, what gift do I have naturally I kind of give back to young people and maybe even reach a larger audience? So now it's like, all right, now I'm not just coaching 14 or 18 athletes on a team. Maybe I could start a platform. I could reach hundreds of kids, right? Or maybe I could start a platform where maybe this interview that I had with somebody 2 years ago could be the message that they needed to receive 10 years from now. You know what I'm saying? When they look back on my page, right? So I'm like, what type of portfolio can I build? And I love the name Inner City Mindset. And that's what the idea started. And hopefully this is something I could leverage after I'm done with my doctoral program. And hopefully I get the support from, the career that I'm taking on, right?
Oh, for sure, man. Listen, because that's what I hear when you talking about JUCO, even JUCO athletes, they've got a totally different mindset. And when I coach, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, they got that JUCO mindset. I'm going to get this kid because I know they're going to be a dog. Just like you, they are working to earn a spot at the next level at a 4-year college or university. And so there is no babysitting, where it's extremely difficult now for high school students, no matter the sport, because now you're competing with the transfer portal that's in place now. You got NIL deals. So kids, like, if you can get a kid to stay out of school for 4 years, man, that's golden. But that's not happening now. But you're saying, hey, whether you transfer here or there or whatever, there's some skills and tools that you need when you're going to these different places. And if you don't have them, there's somebody that does, and that wants it way more than you do. And when you leave this place, if you're not implementing the strategies and the tools and the skills that you've learned over that 1 year at the university, or those 4 years at a university, life can get very, very hard.
Absolutely. And you mentioned teach like NIL. We have freshmen in high school driving Benzes, right? Crazy. Cars that worth over 100, 200K. And it's tough, right? Because at 17, 18 years old, you just don't have the experience or the financial literacy behind it to make these financial decisions, right? And for me personally, like, something that I would love to do is just help people make better decisions, right? Help them shift their mindset financially. Because, there are people out there who are like NIL experts, right? Or whatever the case is. And they can help these kids with the taxes and stuff like that, right? But I think something that's more valuable than all of that is shifting your mindset, right? Because guess what, right? You're going to pay taxes, right, depending on the things that you're purchasing, right, for the most part, and how you invest and how you spend that money, right, depending on what strategy you take. But you see a lot of young people that they have this life-changing, opportunity to make a lot of money at the college level, and they just blowing it. And I'm just like, brother, take that and use it as a down payment on a home, or invest that money where you could really build some generational wealth, right? I mean, but here's the thing. When you see your favorite ball player or your favorite artist dropping 40K at the club in one night, you telling yourself, like, time out, I finally have an opportunity to do something that's similar to that, right? So I'm starting to see a lot of young people that's not really thinking long term. One injury could change your life, right? One bad financial advisor could really, change your life in a really negative way, right? Or one terrible accountant, so... I just wish that some of these kids would make better decisions and understand that nothing is guaranteed, right? Nothing is guaranteed. Let's say, for example, you play pro ball 1 year and you making the league minimum, right? Let's say the league minimum is 800K. Taxes are gonna eat 40% of that.
Oh yeah, easy.
Right? And now you need to sustain your lifestyle. You need to sustain your partner's lifestyle. If y'all have kids, right? How about starting like some type of college fund, where now your child in the future, if they need a vehicle, for example, for college, now they have, a lump sum of money put away. But when the focus is who has the bigger chain, who has the fastest car, who's rocking the most, expensive, clothes, it tends to become a problem because, you're competing with people that, again, you don't know what's behind that, right? I feel like every other week we're hearing stories of pro athletes that are getting caught up and jammed up. And
just heard one last week.
Yeah, illegal gambling schemes.
It was a big one last week.
This and that. So I just wish that, like, a lot of young people kind of ask themselves, like, listen, that person is driving a Beamer at 18 years old. Cool. Maybe that kid comes from wealth. I'm happy for him and his family. Understand? But for me, I don't have much to fall back on. I want to be the one that's building generational wealth, So again, like I say, staying true to yourself and making decisions that are truly going to put you in a much better space in the future. For example, I remember seeing kids in high school rocking $300, $400, belts, right? Rocking $800 sneakers. I'm like, damn, like, where these kids getting this money from? And then you hear about how they're doing now, right? Trying to sustain that lifestyle and the mistakes that they have made to try to sustain that lifestyle. It's very unfortunate and sad, you know. So I think that the key is living a life below your means and staying true to yourself and everything.
Yeah. And that's the thing about that comparison game. You may be looking at, the person that has this 6-figure car. It's a bill that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want the stress of paying that bill.
You don't want that stress.
Don't let that bad.
Like, I don't know if insurance is expensive where y'all at, but in Brooklyn.
Can't even afford an oil change.
Yeah.
But you're looking at what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Houses. They got this house. They're in it right now. But low key, and you don't know, you don't see it. You just see what's on the outside or what they feel like they want to show you. But they crying at night trying to figure out how they're going to pay that mortgage or that rent on that house.
Living check to check.
So, yeah, people gotta get out of that mindset for sure. They gotta get out of that mindset. But it takes people like you. It takes people like, I love Speed, the streamer. He's got all of this money. And he goes back to his hood, and he is having these conversations with his dad. He cannot get his dad to leave the hood.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you can come live with me. I'll buy you a house. I'll buy you all of this, where he has all this success. And his dad's like, no, I'm good over here. And so I think that's the other thing that we've got to start to teach our athletes, especially when they do have a little more than what's expected at their age. It's like, okay, how do you nurture that? And how do you continue to nurture and shift that mindset, even when those that may have taught you something totally different aren't ready and aren't willing to shift?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, like we mentioned, right? Like, it's all about staying true to yourself. Like, for example, I used to work at Audi as a valet driver, right? And I used to work at the Audi service. So the only vehicles I go in through lanes are vehicles that have issues, right? And I will see people that will drive off the lot with a brand new car. They back from 2 weeks because there's an electrical issue with the car or this and that. And it's just like, wow, like, can you imagine that $1,200 car note and you dealing with, mechanical issues and something? Like, I just wish people understand what they're signing up for, right? Like, for example, New York City car insurance, if you're a brand new driver, fresh driver's license, you're paying like about $600-700 a month in car insurance. Now, don't get me wrong, if you put it under your parents' name or something like that, it'll be a lot cheaper. Maybe they have a lot of years with a license, they have a clean record, whatever the case is. But under your name in New York City, you're not paying no less than like $600 insurance. So you see young people that buy vehicles and they don't even know how to insure these cars, So again, it comes down to, trying to live a life, not living a life below your means, trying to do things you might not be able to afford at the moment. Because guess what, Tish, now you have a car note for the next 7 years, right? And for the next 7 years, you got to figure out how I'm going to make this payment.
Yeah.
Right? So that I can entertain this perception that people have of me. That's all it is, You see people that drive a German vehicle or that own a nice big home, but they live in check. They up to here every month trying to make things happen. That's just not the way I want to live my life. I want to be able to travel whenever I want. I want to be able to eat whatever I want. I know people that live, that drive really nice vehicles, and they can't have a nice steak dinner at one of the top steakhouses in Midtown right now,
Mm-hmm.
That's just not how I want to live my life. To me personally, a vehicle just trying to get me from A to B. It's just a tool. You understand?
Yeah.
But I can't speak for everybody else because there are people that they've loved cars their whole lives, and their dream is to have a certain type of vehicle. So who am I to tell them what they should and shouldn't do? However, I just want to make sure that this is how you could truly afford, and I want to make sure that before you could afford that car note, your family's good, your kids are good, your partner's good.
Yeah. Now you talk a lot about mindset, and a lot of people they hear mindset and they're saying it as a catchphrase, something cool to say nowadays, especially in this era of online coaches and things like that. But you've built an actual structure around it. This is what you teach. This is who you are. This is what you've lived.
Mm-hmm.
What's one principle from your frameworks that you're going out and you're teaching in your workshops and what you're speaking on as a professional speaker that you feel some people may misunderstand or they oversimplify it?
I would say two things, transparency and vulnerability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of young people that are so afraid to be vulnerable with, mentors in their lives. Sometimes we're going through a really tough patch in our lives, and we're afraid to have certain conversations, with our parents, right? Depending on what type of relationship you have with your parents or your cousins. And for example, you might have grew up in a household where it was always tough love, right? With your pops. But maybe you were softer with your mom, right? So now you don't feel vulnerable. You don't want to be vulnerable with your father, right? But you feel more comfortable being more vulnerable with a mentor at school or with your college coach or whatever the case is. But I think one of the things that I try to spread is like, I think that there's power in vulnerability, right? And being transparent with people. And I think that allows me to connect, to have a deeper connection with the audience that I'm trying to reach, because I'm not afraid to be transparent and vulnerable when it comes to my story. And if I'm speaking to a group of young people and they have a question for me, I'm going to be as honest as possible, because I want to make sure that they're not making the same decisions. They're not making the same mistakes that I maybe made in the past, right? And that's a message that I hope a lot of older people could have with the generation that's coming behind them. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and transparent with these kids, because you could be potentially saving their lives.
Mm-hmm. God, put that on a shirt. Oh my God, I had to sit it before you see my face. You had to sit there, had to hit me for a minute. Like, be vulnerable with people. You might be saving somebody's life. Because when I was a teacher, I was K-12, and the amount of my boys that like you got to be the toughest, hardest person all the time. Like, no, you don't
that get tiring though?
I'm trying to tell you, angry. Well, what Cat Williams said? You mad at breakfast? Who mad at breakfast, right? And I think again, when we talk about vulnerability, man, it's that comfortability, it's that community, man. Of I know I can be 100% authentically me in this space. I didn't see my dad cry till my grandmother died, and since that moment, like, when we'll talk about it, like that was something that he wished he had done earlier, and like now, I cry in front of my daughter. I don't care. I don't care nothing about that.
Absolutely.
But like, we don't always build a space for folks, and I think like when we talk about modeling things or giving folks another narrative that they can see, it starts with us and who's in our vicinity, right? A lot of my bad money habits, because you was talking to me and you didn't even know it. A lot of things talking to me, I'm still trying to figure it out, man. But a lot of my money habits came from watching my parents. It's Christmas time. We ain't got the money. We finna go borrow over here, get these kids this stuff, and we'll figure it out next year. I don't want to do that. Like, I've seen how that is, yet I find myself doing that, right? And I gotta see something else, and then I can do it. That's just my personality. But as of right now, I'm doing the things that I watched my parents do, and I'm a free and reduced lunch kid. We have a whole lot of money.
Right.
I am a multiple degree college professor.
Right.
I don't need to be paycheck to paycheck no more.
Right.
I should be living better. So I thank you for that word, man. I think it's about that exposure, but then the environment, right? So that we can keep doing those things. And as you're building, because brother, you building something here, man. That's going to live long past this podcast. Us, like, this is a culture that you're building when it comes to mindset. So how do you stay focused on the legacy? And specifically when we're living in a world, as we've said through this whole podcast, that is right now focused. How do you stay focused on the legacy word?
I think, like, for the most part, when it comes to staying focused on a legacy, it's just making sure that I'm staying proactive every single day about how I touch everybody that I come in contact with, right? So, I love connecting with young people, right? So, if I'm on a public transportation, right, and I see a young kid that just got to school and you could tell the son on his mind, I'm not afraid, to, approach him like, yo, like, everything all good? Like, like, going through something mentally, how things going with you and your family, especially when I'm connecting with my little cousins. Sometimes I've noticed that a lot of my younger cousins, they look at me and my siblings as like, kind of like, not unk status, but like, we getting a little older.
Now, you up.
You up, man. It's all right.
You up. You up.
To them, they probably like, damn, like, I know E is cool, but like, maybe I don't feel, comfortable, approaching him and sharing, this little tough patch that I'm going through in my life. But then I'll find out things through their TikTok, for example, so they be having like little reels and stuff like that. And they might have like something like, the top, toughest parts of your life. And they'll put like, 2017, this injury, 2019, my parents divorced, this and that. I'm like, damn, like, we in 2025. Like, I wish you felt comfortable coming to me
Yeah.
and sharing this, 6 years ago, whatever the case is. But I know that sometimes the people that's closest to you are hurting, and you don't
Yeah.
even know it. So I think like just making sure that I'm speaking life into everybody that I touch on a daily basis in different ways, right? So, for example, if I'm speaking sports with my dad, like last night we were watching the World Series, the Dodgers versus the Blue Jays. Let's say we're talking about one of the pro athletes on the field might bring up, something that one of the pro athletes are going through in their personal lives, and we'll kind of just have like a life moment. So like for example, we were talking about Vladdy Jr. Yesterday, and I was telling my dad, I'm like, oh, like I'm so proud of how much he's developed as a person, because I could tell that his parents, they ran like a strict household, and he never got the opportunity to truly, like live life as a young kid because he was so locked in on, playing pro baseball and doing well at that level. But I was telling my dad that I'm really proud of the way he's been able to develop as a young man. And I've always seen Vlad Jr. as like a big kid. You could tell, like, again, he's a star athlete on the field, but you could tell mentally, he's like a big teddy bear, a big child. But I've seen so much maturity in the way he handles himself off the field with his family, and that has made me turn to an even bigger fan of him and his family. Because sometimes, you might be a fan of a pro athlete, but then off the field, they're a terrible person, they're a terrible human being, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to connect with people on different levels. Some people I'm not speaking sports to. I'm kind of speaking life into them through finance, right? Through financial literacy.
Yeah.
Other people I might be speaking life into them through education, because I know that's kind of like their passion, right? So I think it's important for us, as human beings, to be well-rounded as possible. Listen to different genres of music, right? Watch different sports, because guess what? You might not understand football right now, but you might be catching a drink with somebody and you have no idea who that person is. And y'all could just be connected on sports. They might like your vibe, they might like your energy, and they could present an opportunity. They could present a speaking opportunity for you. You understand? So I think just treating everybody with respect and just trying to be as well-rounded as possible.
Love that, man. You get so many things just with respect alone. With the start there, then watch the blessings overflow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, so what's next? What's next for Inner City Mindset?
Yeah, so with Inner City Mindset, again, it started as a podcast, right? It started as a podcast to help empower inner city athletes, right? But now the focus is to really, help empower inner city talent, inner city youth in general, right?
Yeah.
Young people that aren't only in the sports world, young people that are going to be future doctors, right? Future educators, young people that are going to be in law enforcement, young people that are going to, go, the science route, right? And I think that, I think right now focusing on the podcast, but really making sure that I have opportunities to speak life into young people as much as possible. So definitely a lot more speaking engagements. I mentioned earlier the series I'm going to start doing a lot more, like your message to inner city talent series, where I'm going to be, because I want to hear from all mentors in the city, right? I don't only want to hear from the pro athlete that made it pro and now is back in New York City and doing, great things. I also want to hear from the guy that makes my sandwich at the deli, right? I want to hear from the young man that is organizing the fruits at the supermarket. I want to hear from the NTA worker. I want to hear from my local law enforcement. I want to hear from my firefighters. I want to hear from district attorneys, right? What is your message? Why? Because I feel like sometimes we're so focused on, reaching our personal goals and, and hitting our next goal that we don't really focus on, bringing the young people that's coming behind us up as well and uplifting them, right? So I think this is an easy way to hear a message, 5-minute message from somebody who's doing big things in this city, and you never know who that message could reach, right? So again, like I said earlier, I wanted to start a platform where will be manageable with the time that I have. And so I knew I wasn't gonna have the time to coach Little League baseball or anything like that. But I knew that public speaking and hosting workshops and being in the education world, I knew this is something I can kind of do naturally and I'm very passionate about. So that's definitely where it came from, for sure.
I love it. I love it. Because who else is going to get those people's to share their stories,
Mm-hmm.
have their voices be heard. And that's everybody plays a role in society. And that's so important that when you're talking about respect, those people, once you start telling their stories and people get to hearing them, they're gonna start respecting them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a balance of when you're going about society of wanting to have a growth mindset, but not looking down on the people that are serving you, that are organizing the fruit and making your sandwich at the deli and things like that, because they got dreams and goals too.
Say it again.
But they wake up and they serve you every day. And that might be what they're called to do. And so I'm just keeping that balance. So yeah, man, I'm excited. I'll be tuned in. Now, while we got you focused on the athletes for a little bit longer, what message do you want to leave for the student athletes that are from the inner city that are listening right now?
Wow, I would say to continue to follow your dreams, right? Don't lose sight of where you're going, but at the end of the day, don't forget where you came from. And I would say that the sky's the limit. My high school coach, Coach Mo, he would always say that the sky's the limit, right? And shout out to Coach Herbie and Coach Mo. They played a major role in my development all throughout high school, Abraham Lincoln High School. Yeah, like I would say the sky's the limit. Like I told you earlier, Dr. C, I didn't ever think I was capable enough of earning an MBA and earning a doctoral degree. But when you put good people around you that truly believe in you, it's amazing what you could achieve in life. And for those older educators that are starting to retire, don't thank them. But now it's our turn, right, to kind of step up and, be that blueprint in terms of how we live our lives and, the example that we set for these kids.
Ooh, you just said a word. It reminded me of folks like, where the cookouts and stuff at? And so it's like, we supposed to be throwing them. Like, it's us now. We're up. Like the older generation, they done had their time. They ready to kick their feet up and sail off into retirement. It is time for us to pour back into our communities if that's what we want to see.
And I would love to add something real quick. Like, for example, this could even relate to your personal lives with your family, right? So, like, a few years ago, we started doing a family holiday party. So we started doing, like, July 4th barbecues again. And last year, we had our first, like, annual, holiday party in a pretty long time where we kind of, like, rented out a venue, decorations, we had Santa there, we had gifts. It was an awesome time, right? And, big shout out to my cousins, right, that have been super supportive with making this happen because, our aunts and uncles, like, they put in their time hosting birthdays after birthdays, holiday party after holiday party, and it's time for us to step up. So it's time for us to learn how to make that mac and cheese. It's time for us to learn how to make, that awesome family dish. It's time for us to be there early decorating. It's time for us to step up, to clean up right after the event. It's cool showing up, with your nice fit, at start time, right? And leaving early. But it's time for us to step up. And last year was a major success. And this year we're running it back, right? Running it back. So we're super excited about it. So I just kind of wanted to share that because, that example, again, this plays a major role in our personal lives as well. It's time for us to step up.
Step up.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you said personal life, professional life, that is the message. Step up.
Step up.
But as you step up, get some test runs with the mac and cheese before you just throw it out there for everybody. Like, just test runs.
Right.
Don't wait for the gathering.
Don't start there. I don't know. Brandon cranberry sauce.
Because I'm the family member. I'll ask who made it, and if I don't like the name, I'm gonna walk right past it. I'm sorry. Can't do that.
But we gotta be strategic with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we gotta kind of like assign certain dishes to the right people. You know what I'm saying? But we kind of got this down to a science right now. So we know who to assign who.
Make the punch. Let me see if you know how to add how much sugar you need to add.
Exactly. It's funny you say that because when I was playing JUCO ball, like, when I come off a winter break, I'm recording my mom, I'm taking notes. Like, I'm not about to be out here starving. I had a George Foreman girl too. Like, we're gonna make it happen.
Gotta eat.
Right.
That George Foreman saved lives.
Yeah. Hey, Edwin. We ain't never done this before, but you've been giving a lot of shout outs during this episode. Let's just go ahead and have a shout out segment with Edwin. Go ahead and shout out everybody who played a role in your life, man. Anybody you want to shout out, go ahead and go.
Okay, I mean, let's start from the beginning. My parents, right? They obviously played, the biggest role, right? They've done a great job raising me and my siblings. I would say little league coaches, man, organization, starting with organizations, the Brooklyn Bonnies, OLS, youth service played a major role. Little league coaches, Coach Lou with youth service, Coach Wiz played a major, role in my development as well. Jerry Caskey, he was an organizer. He was the founder of the Brooklyn Bonnies. He's somebody that played a major role. Coach Pearson was awesome. In high school, Coach Mo and Coach Hurry played a major role. Again, I'm spending 6 days out of the week with these guys, right? So these are like my second parents, and everything that we needed, they made sure that we had. Miss Ebert, our athletic director over at Abraham Lincoln High School, the best of the best. She was awesome. And to this day, she's making sure that those athletes have everything that they need, right? In college, Coach Dyke, he was my head coach. That freshman, Coach Hawkins, did a great job making sure we need everything that we needed. They were awesome. Coach Long was great over at CCAC. But I would say, man, Coach Torres over at Point Park, this guy, I would say, out of all those coaches, probably developed me the most. When I tell you, this man pushed me mentally day in, day out. It was to a point where I'm like, yo, does this guy even like me as a person, as a player? You understand? But I'm sure you heard the saying is that you should be worried when nobody's paying attention to you, right? Yes. But when somebody sees something in you, man, they're going to make sure to push you. And I couldn't thank him enough. Coach Rock, as well, played a major role in my development, you know what I'm saying? And that whole Point Park coaching staff, they were great. When it comes to personal cousins of mine, my siblings, obviously, but my cousin Ray, my cousin Jonathan, my cousin Pablo, Ariel, Hobbs, like, we were super close growing up, always, right? And I think that as an athlete, they really developed me a lot, right? So, I told you I would go catch those men's baseball games with my cousin Jonathan and Pablo, but then I will also develop a lot when it comes to street ball basketball and how to carry myself in certain communities with my cousins Ray, Hob, and A as well. So big shout out to all of them as well. My family's everything. I feel like it takes a village, man. And when I say step up, I mean, like, it takes a village. Everybody's going to add value to that young person's development, right? So the dude that making the bacon and cheese in the morning, he's adding value, right? He making sure that kid is fed before that game, right? The parents are making sure that there's food on the table, making sure that that rent is paid, making sure that they're enrolling their kids into these leagues, right? That's everything. And also, like, there's always a lot of community support systems that are offering support as well. But it takes a village, right? And I think for us, it's all about doing what we can to get back. So for me, I told you earlier, I knew I wasn't going to have the time to, like, coach Little League due to the career path that I took and things like that. But I'm like, man, like, if I could add value in a different area, right? Something that might not be as valuable right now with the financial literacy side, right? As a 13-year-old kid, but maybe the personal development, right? So that when that kid is going to a college campus to meet the head college coach, they know how to give a firm handshake. They know about body language and eye contact, right? I stress this all the time, and we see so many young people that when you greet them, they don't even know how to greet you correctly. No eye contact. They looking down, no firm handshakes, right? And the way you carry yourself is really gonna, dictate the rest of your career as an athlete and as a professional. So the personal development is key, but the emotional intelligence aspect is huge, right? So how are you gonna respond when you face some diversity? Why? Because for some of these kids, they've always been that star athlete in the field. But how are you going to react when coach says you're not playing today? Matter of fact, you're not playing for the rest of the week. Because we got a JUCO transfer that we think is way better than you. That they think that he works way harder than you, right? How are you going to react? And I say this all the time, man. Nothing sadder than seeing a kid earn a scholarship to play college ball and they back in the hood in 6 months. With all the excuses in the world. Well, the coach didn't like me. They were racist. The professors didn't want the best for me, this and that. And it's sad, right? Because at the end of the day, in life, when you have a boss one day, they don't want to hear excuses either. You're getting paid to produce, right? You're getting paid to produce. And right now, with this job market and the way AI is playing a major role,
tighten up.
And everything, we all got to tighten up, right? Because nobody's safe, So I think it's one of those things where it's like, we just got to make sure that we're developing our kids as much as possible because it's gonna get real scary out there for the new generation that's coming behind us. You know, like you go to supermarkets right now, you only see 2-3 cashiers, right? Everything is self-checkout, right? So we got to pick up on these things.
I don't like that either because I ain't getting paid.
I'm
Trying
trying to tell you.
be checking out my own groceries. I don't
Exactly.
even. I order them now, so I ain't even worried about it.
Yeah, but you see how Amazon has played a major role as well,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
these small mom and pop shops, there's no business no more. So
Yeah.
I want our young people to have some social awareness and see what's going on around us. Because 20 years ago, if you had a job at BJ or at Costco and you was a cashier, that might have been good enough to pay your bills and put your kids through school and everything. Now you only see 2 cashiers. That means if there was 20 back in the day and there's only 3 now, those are 17 salaries that are no longer available. 17 jobs that are no longer available.
And that business still gonna tell you they ain't got no money.
Right.
They still gonna lie to you and tell you they ain't got no money. But the way you just broke it down, there's 17 people y'all ain't paying.
Exactly.
So where is money coming from, man? Edwin, you left us with so many gems, and I'm sure we weren't even able to hit it all in this hour and a half. So tell our listeners where they can connect with you, man. What's your socials? What's your website? Where can they peep that podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to social media, like on Instagram, you can follow me on Inner City Mindset, INNER City Mindset. Same thing on YouTube, Inner City Mindset. You can just search up Inner City Mindset. You can also connect with me at innercitymindset.com, where you can reach out to me via email as well. But yeah, like I think the easiest way to kind of get in contact with me is via DM on Instagram. Just type up, at Inner City Mindset, and yeah, like, check out, the content I've been posting. What I'm all about. And one thing that I would say is like you can kind of see like the passion behind every interview. If you get the chance to watch them on Spotify or on iTunes, you could look up Inner City Mindset. You could hear the full interview as well. But again, just a young man from the inner city who has been through a lot, has overcame a lot as well, and just really want to speak life into young people from the city that I grew up in, because I feel like there's a lot of talent in this city. There's a lot of talent in cities like Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, Miami. And I want inner city youth to understand, like, you're more than capable. You're more than capable. You're more than capable than that kid that goes to the private Catholic school, in the suburbs. Don't think if you go to public school, you can't compete with them academically, or you can't compete with them athletically as well. I get it. They got the best trainers. They got the best equipment. They have all the support in the world. I get it. You had to hop on 2 trains to get to practice. I get it. In order for you to catch that ride to that tournament in Connecticut, you had to catch a ride with a parent that, you necessarily don't feel, all comfortable with riding with, right? But it is what it is. Your parents couldn't make that tournament, right? So I just want inner city youth to understand, like, you're not in it alone. There's a lot of adults that are around that actually been through the same thing that you've been through, but they might not feel comfortable sharing, for whatever reason, right? You see a lot of athletes that are kind of traumatized by their experience, and sometimes they don't want to share their stories, and they're afraid to be vulnerable and transparent with our young people, right? But I want them to understand, at least on my platform, or at least if they were to reach out to me, I'm more than willing to share mine and speak life into them.
Hey, we appreciate you, Edwin, man. Go ahead and give our wonderful guests another round of applause, man. Thank you for sitting and hanging out with us, and thank you for dropping them gems. Before we head out, though, Tish, tell the people what you got cooking.
Yes. My athletic directors, coaches, and sports professionals, it is the time. It's the time. So if you're looking to inspire your team for the season or prepare them for their future beyond the game, I am now booking speaking engagements to close out 2025 and to kick off 2026. So go ahead and visit TeeshJohnson.com to book now for workshops, locker room talks, and keynotes. Again, that is Tish Johnson.
And after you go there and you book your session and you make sure that your team get all this good game that Tish be giving up, then you go back and you go back to this podcast, you hit like, you hit subscribe, and you share this message with someone else that you feel like it'll resonate with. Then after you do that, and you like, hey, Dr. C, I still like to read things that are longer than 15, 20 seconds. Bet. Then I got a spot for you. You can check out my Substack, claygo.hips at substack.com, where you can see everything from small poetry pieces to longer form text. And Yeah, man, it's a good time if you like reading. And if you don't, come by anyway. Then you might end up liking reading. But after you do all of those things that we mentioned, you know what the most important thing is. Be good people.
AC, God told me to start this podcast, and then he told me to call you. The time is now. You ready?
I got you, T. Let's do it.